Trying to understand the eminence of real-world assets and the DeFi world? Then you are welcome to Link to the Chain, a podcast brought to you by Vsauce. It is designed to help you understand the happenings of decentralized finance along with real-world assets. I am your host, Nikki from Vsauce. I will be inviting experts from the Web3 industry to share with you their experiences and ideologies on RWAs and the DeFi world.
Thank you for joining us, Philip. Vsauce is super pleased to have you join us today. And we know you're the CEO and co-founder of Frigg. Can you share with our audience what Frigg is and exactly what Frigg does?
Thank you, Nikki, and very glad to be part of the podcast. Yeah, absolutely. So to myself first, you mentioned it. I'm one of the co-founders of Frigg. My background is in quant. I'm a quant at heart. So I used to work within a bank. I know that's sort of a taboo word to say these days, but I used to work for UBS as a strategy analyst and later a slide monkey for some C-suite execs within the bank. I also used to work within research, within renewable energy research particularly, and currently also doing my PhD in quant finance at the University of Zurich, and in parallel to that, obviously scaling Frigg. And with Frigg, we aim to become, an ambitious target is to become the world's most efficient engine for tokenizing green bonds and have full environmental transparency attached to these. So what you can envision is that we work with project developers themselves and provide them with a full end-to-end infrastructure to allow them to build investor gateways to their sustainable infrastructure project.
Wow, that was a mouthful, huh? It sounds like you did get out of UBS just in time with, whatever recent news has happened with them. But that's really cool to know that you started off in traditional finance and now you're moving into DeFi. So that brings me into the next question. What made you guys at Frigg choose DeFi and real world assets as your startup topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we started out actually looking at the problem bottom up, really talking to project developers themselves. And we quickly realized that the current way of acquiring financing for their projects is extremely cumbersome. I mean, they also need to do a lot of window shopping for funds, meaning they need to speak with multiple different investors. They each have their own workflow and obviously not very scalable way to acquire funds. So realizing this, we wanted to build something that made it seamless for them and have one standardized workflow for acquiring those funds. And then when you turn yourself around and looking at the investor's perspective of the dilemma of deploying capital into non-listed funds, we wanted simultaneously to solve some problems on their end too. And we quickly realized that a solution that could work here would be a decentralized finance solution. And actually being based in Switzerland, this came at a good point because at the time we realized this, Switzerland was pushing this distributed ledger technology bill that allowed us to build the software that I was talking about before. A bit of different angles meeting or approaching the problem. Just we came to the conclusion that decentralized finance would be the optimal fit here for all stakeholders.
Yes, smart choice. And it is an interesting term to bring up because I think a lot of people nowadays, they hear blockchain and they kind of know what that entails. But I don't think a lot of people have heard that, term DLT or distributed ledger technology. But that's cool that you brought it up. But moving on, Frigg has been working on bridging the gap, right, between traditional finance, like where you came from, and DeFi, which is decentralized finance. Can you tell us more about the challenges you've faced and how you've tackled them?
Absolutely. And I think you're touching upon a very important note there, Nick. And we obviously started building the software bottom up. By that, I mean starting to solve a pain point for originators, having a seamless software gateway to access a wider network of investors. But we built this platform really, how should I say, in a DeFi native way, meaning you as an investor, if you want to buy into these assets, you would need to have a wallet. And we quickly saw when we launched our proof of concept end of last year, where we helped a developer tokenize one of its hydropower projects, that wasn't really a right product market fit, because the current investors that are, at least from our perspective, venturing in the DeFi world are looking for certainly higher returns than what a green bond attached to a renewable energy project can deliver. And here, that was one discrepancy. And the other was going about it from a different angle here again. In the traditional finance space, it's extremely sought for, these products. But they're not there yet. They don't have the technical infrastructure that allows them to deploy capital via a decentralized finance software solution. So this is definitely something of a realization that we did right after launching the POC, and something that we're heavily working on now, on trying to solve in terms of bridging exactly what you say, Nikki, the gap between the decentralized finance world and still the traditional finance world, where most of the capital that is eager to get deployed into this ecosystem lies.
100%. I think it just takes a lot of intention and time and education. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think the last point with education, definitely. There is a massive gap here between investors that are currently investing in these assets and trying to convince them to go via a different, let's say, ecosystem or a middleware system. That's one challenge. And obviously the developers themselves, they're certainly also not crypto or DeFi natives. So you have to balance this two-sided marketplace somehow.
Yes. And I also think it comes to bridging the gap with also building a community. So I think having podcasts like this, where we can, really dive deep and get get all the juicy details that we can help our audience kind of understand in a digestible way, is a really good step. So thank you for contributing to the community. And how do you envision the future of real world assets and DeFi? How do you see Frigg kind of being that puzzle piece to contributing to the space and the community?
That's an excellent question, and obviously very difficult to answer, because a lot of things is happening in the market. But definitely a trend that we see from our angle is that a lot of these traditional financial intermediaries are starting to explore, or have explored for a while now, the usage of blockchain technology in their operations. And this obviously makes it a bit easier for us to dock into that ecosystem. So we're betting on the fact that we pivot to becoming a B2B software provider, where we connect the real world assets that we help to bring on chain into the backend system of a traditional financial intermediary. And obviously the strategy is twofold. One is they now have the technical infrastructure to support it. They also have the clients that want to deploy capital into these assets. So that's a plus. But secondly, also from a regulatory standpoint, we see obviously there is going to be more regulation coming our way, and we need to cater for that somehow. And we believe that being under the umbrella of a regulated financial institution is the way to go. And you obviously have other benefits too, with network effects and the scalability there. But that's where we see the big trend going. Traditional players becoming more DeFi native, and you see those two ecosystems almost merging into one holistic one.
Yeah, makes total sense. And it was a really good segue, because you did mention regulatory challenges, right, that the DeFi space is currently facing. So in your opinion, how do you think this will affect the growth and adoption of DeFi in real world assets in the future?
That's an excellent question. And obviously, we need to somehow influence, or at least gently nudge and guide regulators in a way that makes the regulatory environment not stringent, but actually incentivizes growth of the ecosystem. Because it has so much apparent benefits that it would be a pity to not see it grow. And we have actually been fortunate to be awarded a grant from the Swiss government, where we are going to look into exactly this from a research angle. So how should platforms like Frigg be optimally regulated in a way that actually promotes the usage of a decentralized finance solution rather than a outdated traditional finance solution. And here within, and you can see that in the regulation, DLT regulation on a global scale, it's extremely nascent still. And hence, there is a lot of opportunity for improvements. And we see, for example, improvements in terms of even promoting transparency further could be one way to improve on the existing framework. Obviously, by default, the usage of DLT promotes transparency, at least from a financial perspective, but maybe you could even impose on these platforms to provide more transparency in terms of asset performance and linking or bridging that off-chain asset with the on-chain data provisioning, meaning, providing transparency on the IoT data that's installed on the asset and how to bring that on chain. Should that be a requirement or not? So we definitely see that as a right way to go about promoting regulation rather than regulating it in such a way that it becomes stringent and constraining for these platforms.
Yeah, that's a good thing to find a balance between being, having that freedom and transparency, but also not feeling, like you said, the rules being too strict or having no boundary. Because isn't that what the blockchain technology is all about, right? You want to have it open. You want people to be able to see and be able to trust. So that's a great point that you brought up. You have to always find a good balance between anything really in life. So what I also enjoy about what Frigg is doing is y'all have a strong focus on sustainability and climate change. How does this play into the work that you're doing in the DeFi space with the real world assets?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're heavily focused on, or actually have that as our core DNA, is to have a platform that focuses solely on sustainable infrastructure assets and financing thereof. And we believe this really narrow focus on one particular asset class is one of our USPs. Because, and maybe going back to the questions you asked before, this tokenization, or how should I say, imposing of DLT framework to financing these assets, this has almost become a common commodity. There are a lot of platforms out there that do this. We believe that in order to add value to the ecosystem, you need some kind of this vertical integration where you understand the asset class that you're operating within and thoroughly solve the pain points that asset developers on one end, but also investors in this space are struggling with at the moment. So we believe in, and we are building that as version 2 of our platform, a B2B platform where we basically reflect the sustainable finance workflow, but in a more digitized way. And let's say DeFi components or the blockchain components, they operate in the back. They're there to be tapped on in terms of giving that transparency layer, liquidity layer, and fractionalization layer to the investor, and to the asset developers, it's been abstracted. We are currently focused heavily on developing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that is kind of the heart and the mission of Frigg, especially with where the world is at today, right? We definitely want to make sure whatever we're contributing is going to help the earth, and we want to leave the earth a better place than how we found it.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. And maybe to take an anecdote here, that's actually one of my co-founders' ultimate motivation for why founding the company. And he's a professor at the University of Zurich. He used to do research in quant modeling for financial intermediaries. So basically models that allows you to, extract that little bit of margin extra on your trades. And he realized that, and that happened after he got kids, and he wanted to use his research more for good, thinking of the next generation, how to better do it than actually develop stuff that is more sustainable, and you can leave something for the next generation that that they again can benefit from and further scale. Well, frankly, we might be a bit in a hurry here to actually deliver that, but we thoroughly believe that guiding the capital markets in the right way and also providing the transparency in guiding that capital is going to be extremely crucial, because the topic of greenwashing is obviously very present and real, and that we thoroughly need to avoid. And that's also part of our DNA at Frigg.
Yeah, 1000%. Definitely long-term sustainability over instant gratification. Moving on, Philip, how do you see DeFi and real-world assets impacting traditional finance? And how do you see a future where they can coexist?
That's a very interesting question. From an outside view, when you look at how these assets are currently financed, it's through a very, very complex value chain that has so many third-party stakeholders that for the most part don't need to be there, but are there as part of how it has been evolved. And obviously some are crucial to impose that governance that is needed. But imagine now if you can standardize and streamline and provide more transparency into a very complex structure that traditional players perhaps are profiting from today. What is going to happen? Well, I think you're thoroughly reinvigorating that ecosystem and potentially also opening doors that there might be some skeletons in. We hope to actually, well, we always use this anecdote of the cake getting bigger, because if you open that and you take away a lot of these fees, then you can start divvying them out into where they are actually delivering value, i.e. on the asset level or to the investor that can then again redeploy into new assets under development. We see this as one of the inflection points perhaps between DeFi and TradFi, but it is promising to see that traditional financial players are looking to become more DeFi native with the infrastructure that they're building. So there's definitely a willingness out there. They're just trying to grab that apparent market share that is going to become the new middleware system built on DeFi.
And obviously we want Frigg to be that bridge, right?
Absolutely, yes, for sure.
Cool. Well, that was a lot. And well, this brings us towards the end, Philip, but I want to give some time for you to kind of just share with us any recent projects or exciting updates about what the team over at Frigg is up to. Yeah, is there anything that you would like to tell our audience?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we as a young startup still, everyone is hands on deck and working tirelessly. We're currently working a lot on what we call the Frigg board. It's the V2 of our platform. And as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, it's going to be the B2B version of our software, where we have streamlined the onboarding for project developers, but also the vetting process for investors on the other end. The reason, well, first of all, standardization, but we also want to create more of a market and a positive feedback loop between project developers and investors, in that we are bringing also the underwriting process as part of that workflow. So you can imagine here, project developers are bringing their assets on chain. They provide all the documentation that an investor needs. They provide an indication of the funds that are required and how these funds are going to be paid back if it's a debt token. But the pricing, the yield of the bond is going to be determined throughout the underwriting process. And we believe that to be a significant value add, because there needs to be a communication on pricing of these securities between the investor and the originator. And so we are very excited about this version 2. And we are doing that also as part of a research project to really find out what are the requirements on both ends of this value chain in order to make a most seamless integration of our software. So we're very excited about that. And we are actually holding the doors open for stakeholders in this space if they want to participate in a government-funded research project. So very excited about the development, and hopefully we'll be launching the product October, November this year.
Incredible. That's a lot to look forward to this fall. Wow. Well, thank you, Philip, for your time today. And where can people find out more about you, about Frigg? Go ahead and, plug your socials.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we are very active on LinkedIn. So please follow us there at frigg.eco. We're also trying to post regular newsletters. So please subscribe to that on our website, frigg.eco. You can subscribe to our newsletter, and we'll make sure to post on a regular basis. We're aiming at once a month at least. But due to capacity constraints, we might be posting on a bit more slower schedule. But those are the two interaction points. And obviously, very happy to hear from the community by contacting via email, where we are normally very responsive.
Sweet. And you said you're in Switzerland, right?
We are indeed, yes. So you can come and visit us if you're there in Zug.
In Zug, yeah. I used to live in Solothurn, actually. Zug is definitely, what do they call it? The Crypto Valley, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Crypto Valley of Switzerland.
Crypto Valley.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Philip. And is it correct to say Prost, like for cheers, right?
Absolutely.
Prost.
Yeah.
Cool. Prost to leaving the world a better place than we found it. There we go.
Appreciate it, Nikki. Appreciate it, Nikki. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
guiding me through here.
With this, we come to the end of the episode. To our audience, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed what we are discussing about the RWA and DeFi world, please don't forget to subscribe to Link to the Chain and share it with others. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow our Instagram and Twitter at Link to the Chain. Looking forward to sharing with you guys the next episode. Stay tuned.